Number 5. Kevin. Numerous cases of kids who report memories of previous lives have been studied over the last 50 years. James Leonenger is an American man who at the tender age of only 2 began having extreme nightmares of a fiery plane crash. Scary. He then described to his parents about being an American fighter pilot who perished when his plane was shot down during World War II. He gave details that included names of American aircraft carriers, first and last names of friends on the ship with him, and a location around him where he believes his plane went down. At 2. Yeah, just 2 years old. A couple things here. Do 2-year-olds even know what or how planes work? This kid's rifling off coordinates like he's dropping in after the gulag. This is wild. Apparently they were at a museum of aircrafts when Kevin's visions and dreams really took off. Pun intended. I mean, maybe he was just fascinated by planes. You know how kids get, right? They like stuff like that. Apparently he went on to tell his parents that he had flown a plane called the Corsair, which took him off a boat called the Natoma, to which they had no idea what he was talking about. James's father decided to do some research of his own. He discovered that there had been a small escort carrier named the Natoma Bay, which had been in the Battle of Iwo Jima. Yo, this kid's giving you drop coordinates, he's IDing planes, that should be enough proof, no? Hey, you better salute your own son and thank him for his service, holy moly. Research proved that there was an actual pilot named James Huston. His plane did get hit by Japanese fire and it was in 1945. I think that's enough proof we need that reincarnations are real. He's gonna be really good at Call of Duty as well, you know?
In at 4, Mum. From Twitter user iWakonda, they said, "My daughter was about 5 when she says, 'You're the best mummy I've ever had.' I said, 'I'm the only mummy you've ever had.' She looks at me and says, 'No, you're the 3rd one, but I like you the best.'" Wow. Yep. Does this girl have 2 other families she's seeing on the weekends and holidays, or is she just deeply in tune with her past lives? It's not uncommon for people to report weird dreams or memories of experiences they haven't lived or perhaps once lived in a distant time or place. However, it's not quite as common for a child to report it. Do you think that's what's happening here, or is she just letting her imagination run wild? In at 3, the woods. From Twitter user YoungMT, they said, "I was hiking alone in the woods with my son who was 7. It was eerie quiet. Out of nowhere," he says, "the woods demand a sacrifice." Wow. Okay, I think what we have here is a little Damien in the making. First of all, at the age of 7, how do you know about sacrifice? Second, why do the woods require one? And third, what happened after? Is the father dead? Did the woods get their sacrifice? Did little Damien here slay everyone? I have so many questions. In at 2, the blue house. From user Phonetics, they said, "Back in the day my younger brother used to tell us about his other grandparents and the blue house they used to live in. After always telling him he was making it up, he told our mother he could bring her there. So we went for a drive. And this 5-year-old little psycho gave her turn-by-turn directions for close to 45 minutes. We ended up 4 to 5 towns away at a dead-end street with an abandoned blue house." Okay, this is creepy. How did the kid know where to go? Was this story legitimate, or did the kid just send them on a wild goose chase until they found a house that matched his story? Perhaps this is another case of kids being more in tune with the spirit world, or perhaps something more sinister is going on. What do you guys think? And finally, in at number 1, I'm dead. This last one is a 3-parter, so bear with me. From Twitter user Wendy Heard, she said, "My kid's BFF started saying, 'I'm a boy,' the second she could talk. Very upset and agitated. Her mum thought she might be trans and started reading up. Then one day, she said, 'I'm not a boy now. I was a boy.' She starts sobbing. 'I miss my sister.' As her language skills improved, she explained further, 'I'm a boy. My sister takes care of me. We walk to work at the factory every day where they make buttons. We speak Spanish.' And then, she said, 'I'm dead. I'm dead.' She starts sobbing. 'I'm dead because I got hit by a car. I was walking to the factory with my sister. The car hit me. It was dusty. I was dead on the dusty road. I miss my sister.' Wow, okay. This sounds like a couple other numbers on our list. This kid seems to be in tune with their past lives. Perhaps they lived in the early 20s, 30s, and the trauma has remained embedded in their consciousness. However, if you don't believe in past lives and instead believe if you're dead, you're dead, then perhaps this is a case of the imagination run wild once again. Kids can be enigmas, and their mind so fragile and malleable, it could be quite easy for a little splash of the past to pour in. But what do you guys think? Do you believe in past lives, or do you just believe that you're dead. In at 5 we have aliens. Some of the biggest signs of parallel universes is the proof that we aren't the only life in this universe and that aliens are among us and live outside of our own planet. NASA, as we all know, are one of the lead investigators of space, and they do in fact have proof of extraterrestrial life, but a lot of the time they hide their findings from the public. In 1976 there were tests performed on Martian soil samples taken from Mars, and the results there were radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients, suggesting that something in the soil was metabolizing the nutrients and producing radioactive gas. One of the original scientists on the case said there was evidence found of organic molecules, which is a key indicator of life. Before this finding, there was a US radio astronomer by the name of Frank Drake who in 1961 developed an equation to help estimate the number of planets hosting intelligent life and those who are capable of communicating with us. By the end of his research, Frank concluded that the final number of communicating civilizations in the galaxy to be about 10,000. Not only do NASA researchers and other scientists have findings of aliens, but one of the most top secret places in the world is Area 51, and many believe they have proof of alien life. There's spacecraft and even aliens themselves inside of the highly secure building. Area 51 is so-called highly classified Air Force facility and is protected by the government. In 1992, a declassified CIA report came to light and the government mentioned the proof of UFOs and their research on it. The only proof we could get from the government would be from ex-employees of Area 51 because the government facility is covered by the Freedom of Information Act. So any evidence they do have, we may never know. Some things the government doesn't have control of is the sightings and alien abduction stories made by people all over the world for centuries. Since the 1940s, there have been so many different people who have seen aliens and UFOs, and they have all similar descriptions, usually an extremely fast-moving saucer-shaped object with bright lights, things that are not of this world and have not been claimed by an airplane company or military aircraft. The proof of extraterrestrial life and spacecrafts proves that there is so much more beyond our planet that we don't know about, and the technology they have access to is so beyond ours that it's very possible that parallel universes do in fact exist.
Number 4. Andrew. In 2014, the parents of a young Andrew Lucas began suspecting that their beloved son may be possessed or even have some sort of ghost inside him. This happened after Andrew started crying almost non-stop, asking why he would continuously claim that his parents let him die in a fire. When his mother, Michelle, asked him what fire he was talking about, Andrew started telling her details about his past life as a US Marine. Hold on. Apparently this happens way more than I thought. This is like really common amongst youngins, you know that, right? Eventually, Mom used these details to uncover the story of a US Marine Sergeant Val Lewis, who died in an explosive attack in Lebanon in 1983. The details of what happened to Lewis and the story Andrew told her were too similar to let pass. Mom decided to take the issue to the TV show Ghost Inside My Child, to which Andrew was given several photographs of military men to look at. He then stopped and zoomed in on one image of Sergeant Val Lewis. Michelle then took her son to Lewis's gravesite in Georgia, to which Andrew laid some flowers. Aww. And this is also probably really jarring for her son, so he's a brave guy, you know? I mean, the images of war in that young man's head, that's gotta be scary for the little guy, you know? Also for Mom, those are hard words hearing from your son. He apparently ran right to the grave, pointing to the name on it saying, "That's my friend." The grave also belonged to a fallen member of the Marine Corps. Now, since it was on a TV show, my first gut feeling is to not really believe this. Apparently, it's been rumored also to be a hoax and is still under investigation if the boy's information was all correct. But for the most part, it seems like maybe the idea of reincarnation just is still blocked by some theorists from actually exploring the idea. I don't know. I kind of believe it, you know? It's scary. Number 3, Anne Frank. Wait a minute, like Anne Frank? Yeah. Apparently Swedish-born Barbro Karlin, who at a young age felt like she wasn't really herself. Born in Sweden in 1954, 9 years after Anne Frank died, she felt like she didn't really fit in. Her parents dismissed her on being called Anne and thought it was pretty weird, a drastic name change from Barbara to Anne. She apparently consistently asked her parents to where her, quote, real parents were, which is terrifying on its own and also really sad. That would be hard to hear as a parent. As Barbara Karlin made her way through school, she was introduced to Anne Frank in class during the 1960s. Like many students learning about the Holocaust and concentration camps for the first time, Barbara was shocked upon hearing Frank's story. She was stunned at how much she found in common with what she was reading. As she and her family were vacationing in Amsterdam, Anne Frank's story was well known worldwide. The secret annex she called home had now been transformed into a museum. Barbara apparently showed her parents the quick shortcuts to get to the Anne Frank house, upon which it all clicked. As she visited the home, she was apparently transported back in time. Her story even led to her meeting Anne Frank's cousin. He was skeptical at first, not sharing anything about him or the family, but oddly enough, he said that only the family would have known what they talked about. After their meeting one-on-one, the man believed she really was the reincarnation of his long-lost cousin. Spooky, okay. I wonder if they do a 23andMe test if it would show your related family. I did that ancestry spit tube and all my cousins are actually all my cousins, so who knows. Number 2, the fourth. In 1996, Sonam Wangdu was just another happy-go-lucky kid. Cartoons, Power Rangers, you know, kid stuff. It's the 90s. However, Sonam was anything but an ordinary child. Apparently to this day, he is recognized and revered by the Buddhist community in Nepal and Tibet as a very important reincarnation, the new Lama. Growing up in Seattle, the boy agreed he would travel to Kathmandu for education and afterwards he would live in the monastery. He was given the name Trulkula, which means reincarnation in Tibetan. Now, the spooky scary part. Deshung Rinpoche III moved to Seattle in 1960 after military took over Tibet and taught at the University of Washington. He was said to be a reincarnation of the original Deshung Rinpoche who lived in Tibet in the 19th century. Before he died, he told his students that he would be reborn in the Seattle area. While pregnant with Trulkula, Carolyn Lama, aka Mum, had dreams and received signs that she interpreted as evidence her child would be born as a reincarnation. The boy's father, sadly, who perished in a traffic accident in 1993, also had similar dreams. Of the hundreds of lamas said to be reincarnations in the Tibetan Buddhist faith, apparently only a couple have come from the West. Mom and the boy underwent several interviews in Seattle before Trulkula was brought to Nepal before being formally enthroned in a ceremony attended by thousands of people. He now goes by Deshung Rinpoche IV. This is wild. I'm shook right now. This is awesome. Look it up. I'm kind of freaking out right now. This is a pretty significant event right here. And number 1, Arthur Flowerdew. James Arthur Flowerdew, great name, was born in England in 1906 where he grew up and lived a pretty normal life. He never left the UK and wasn't fond on traveling much. At about 12, he began to have strange recurring dreams and hallucinations over time, crystallizing into a very clear and vivid image. His dreams were riddled with stone cities carved into cliffs, surrounded by deserts. He didn't really understand what it all meant. There was temples, streets, lanes, structures, as well as a huge boulder just outside this place he was picturing. Desolate desert wasteland daydreams turned into nightmares. One day he was struck with a vivid hallucination of being in the desert in a busy city. So real yet so foreign. He grew up, he grew old, and only ever leaving England once to go to the French coast, the dreams of that mysterious stone city always continued. Arthur one day was watching a documentary on the BBC, and it featured a segment on the ancient city of Petra in Jordan. Arthur nearly fainted. It all came rushing back to him. This was the city that he had always seen. He called the BBC and, scoffing him off as a hoax, they asked to interview him. Even archaeological experts and a world-class authority on Petra quizzed him extensively, and he nailed each question with ease, even correcting experts on some of their research. The Jordanian government even invited him to come out to Jordan, where he continued to baffle experts. Flowerdew was able to immediately find his way around the city without a guide or even a map, giving precise details on landmarks and even pointing out sites that had not been discovered or dug up yet. This is real, like 100% real. He had no interest or motive behind this, he was just having weird dreams. Like something itchy on your brain finally scratched, you know?
In at 5, Red Jacket. From Music Kate, but the tired version, she said, walking with my 2-year-old in a cemetery by our house, she says, Mummy, who is that man in the red jacket by the stone house? She pointed to the mausoleum. There was no one else in the cemetery. He's waving at me. She waved back. He's coming over to talk. This is truly frightening. I've often wondered whether the innocence of a child gives them the ability to see lingering spirits, the ones that adults have become blind to through the tribulations of life. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, and whether imagination or not, this coming out of any child's mouth is creepy. In at number 4 we have past lives. Some of the biggest debates is that of humans living previous lives and the proof of reincarnation. If this is true, it makes the parallel universe theory very strong. Many people throughout the world have claimed to remember their past lives or how they have passed in their previous lives. Many of the people who are able to remember their past lives are children, many between the ages of 2 and 5. Different statements made by these children have shown to correspond accurately to facts in the life and death of a deceased person. Past life regression is a method that uses hypnosis on people to recover memories of their past lives or incarnations. The technique used during the regression involves the subject answering a series of questions while hypnotized to reveal identities and events of alleged past lives people have had. These experiments done are highly debated by scientists and religious leaders. Dr. Jim Tucker, who is now the director of the Division of Perceptual Studies, has been focused on cases of past lives found in the United States for the past 20 years. He's even written a book called Return to Life, which contains many of his findings throughout the years and offers accounts of a very strong American case of young children who remember their previous lives, including the 2 most well-known cases of James Leininger and Ryan Hammonds. James's story started just after his 2nd birthday, where he began having nightmares that would not stop. In his nightmare, he would scream out phrases like "plane on fire," "little man can't get out." When James would mention details of planes and war tragedies, which no 2-year-old boy would know, his parents started to try and put the pieces together, soon realizing their son previously lived as a World War II fighter pilot by the name of James Hustings. There was a book written of this extraordinary boy and the previous life called Soul Survivor, which details the boy's thoughts, findings, and details of his previous life. Ryan's is one of the most famous of past life memories and holds the record for the greatest number of accurate memories of a previous life related to a previous living person. At around 4 years old, he soon began to relate memories to a man named Marty Martin, who worked in Hollywood as a talent agent. For years, Ryan would tell his parents about his previous life as Martin and many facts he would have no clue about at the age and would eventually be verified as true, including having a large swimming pool in his home, he tap danced on stage, he hated cats, he had a younger sister, his mother had curly brown hair, and so many more. These true cases just solidify that we are part of a parallel universe. In at number 3 we have Mandela effect. Many people throughout the world have heard of the Mandela effect or have experienced certain Mandela effects directly. The theory started by none other than Nelson Mandela, but the story that many remember have happened, and this story started this whole theory. The term Mandela effect was first coined in 2009 by Fiona Broome, when she created a website detailing her observation of the phenomenon. Broome was at a conference talking to other people about how she remembered the tragedy of former South African President Nelson Mandela's death in South African prison in the 1980s. And to interject, for the longest time, this Mandela effect happened to me. I thought Mandela had died in the 80s in prison as well. However, this never happened. Nelson passed away in 2013. Broome began talking to many other people who experienced the exact same memories, remembering news coverages on his death as well as a speech by his widow. People all around the world have had the same memories of this story, and over the years there have been an insane amount of different Mandela effects, where so many different people have the exact same memory, but these things have never been true. Some of the most popular Mandela effects are that of the Berenstain Bears, the movie Shazam starring Sinbad, the Monopoly Man's monocle, Curious George and his tail, the Fruit of the Loom label, and many others that are highly debated. Everything from popular movie quotes, cereal brands, song lyrics, popular cartoons are talked about by millions around the world, and many of these are remembered differently than they actually are. But how? It's like Star Wars. Luke, I'm your father. It wasn't even the f***ing quote. Love that. The Mandela effect is when a person believes that their memories are accurate recollections, but many believe in this theory because thousands if not millions of people have the same memories. So does this mean we are all wrong, or are there different dimensions, alternate realities, or parallel universes where these memories are coming from? In at number 2 we have simulation theory. One theory that has become very popular lately is that we are living in a simulation, and this is thought to be true by many throughout the world. Many researchers, scientists, and even Elon Musk believe we aren't truly living in the reality we think we are, and our world could very well be a computer simulation. The idea of the simulation theory can be attributed to the prominent Oxford University philosopher Nick Bostrom in his paper called Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?, where he argues that one of the 3 assumptions could be true. The human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. Any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history, and we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. His paper argues that we cannot, without a doubt, know if any of these theories are 100% true. However, Nick believes the third option is the most probable outcome, and so do many others. MIT developer and Plow Labs executive director Rizwan Virk expanded on Nick's idea in the books The Simulation Hypothesis, describing what he calls the simulation point, meaning the moment at which we could realistically build a Matrix-like simulation. Rizwan describes his interpretation of the simulation theory, stating that the basic idea is that everything we see around us, including Earth and the universe, is part of a very sophisticated, massive multiplayer online role-playing game, and we are all players in the game. The popular movie franchise The Matrix, which came out in 1999, made many starts to think about if this could be possible and made the simulation theory idea popular. What does this mean, you know? I like it, but it's like, who's controlling me? I wish whoever controlled me didn't make me fall on ice, you know? Many people also think we are in a simulation because of our advanced technology and how fast moving it's become over the last few years. It wasn't that long ago where there was no internet, phones, AirPods, electric cars, social media, and over the past couple decades, technology has boomed to an extreme level, which many question, how is it all possible in such a short amount of time? And finally, in at number 1, we have the pyramids. One of the most debated are how the pyramids were built, who built them, and how they were built. Many people have questioned how a society back in 2000 BC were capable of creating and building such complex structures. The most famous and biggest tourist attraction are the pyramids in Giza on the outskirts of Cairo in Egypt. Several of the Giza pyramids are among the largest structures ever built, and the Great Pyramid of Giza in particular is the largest and oldest pyramid and is the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still in existence. The shape of Egyptian pyramids is believed to represent the primordial mound from which the Egyptians believed the earth was created. The shape is also thought to be representative of the descending rays of the sun, and most pyramids were faced with polished, highly reflective white limestone, in order to give them a brilliant appearance when viewed from a distance. Many of the pyramids are believed to be built as tombs for the country's pharaohs and their consorts during the Old and Middle Kingdom periods. The tombs of the pharaohs and the temple they're held in guarantees life after death according to theorists, and the pyramids itself symbolizes the wealth and power of pharaohs. For years it's believed that the Egyptians used a sled which carried a stone block and was attached with ropes to wooden posts, and that's how they built the pyramids, but this has become highly speculated due to the complexity and magnitude of these structures. So many people have theorized how the Egyptians were able to pull off the building some of the largest and most complex structures in history, and the mystery has yet to be solved. It's one of the biggest questions to date and could be an indication of the proof of parallel universes.